Picture this: Rome, the beating heart of an empire, marble temples shining in the sun, senators wrapped in pristine white togas, and somewhere below all that glory, a guy with a stick, knee-deep in what can only be described as the empire's least glamorous export, human waste. That, my friend, was the daily life of a Roman latrine cleaner. And let's be clear, if you think your job sucks, at least you don't spend 12 hours a day fishing out other people's dinner from a communal pit. The empire was built on roads, aqueducts, and poop. Someone had to deal with it, and unfortunately, it wasn't Julius Caesar. Roman latrines weren't private little stalls. Oh no, they were long marble benches with dozens of holes side by side. Imagine sitting shoulder to shoulder with strangers, discussing politics while, well, doing the obvious. Privacy? Never heard of it. Comfort? Forget it. And once all that business dropped into the open sewer below, the cleaner's nightmare began. He had to wade into the muck, scrape, shovel, and unclog the drains. Think of it as ancient plumbing, except you were the plunger. You might think, surely they had proper tools. Nope, most cleaners used long wooden rakes, buckets, and their own two unlucky hands. The waste would pile up, ferment in the heat, and turn into a bubbling swamp of horror. Some historians even note methane gas explosions. Imagine lighting a torch down there. Boom, literal death by fart. And yes, they also had to deal with the sponge on a stick, the Roman version of toilet paper. Guess who got to clean and replace those? That's right, the latrine cleaner. In a society obsessed with status, being a latrine cleaner was basically being invisible, except when people wanted to laugh at you. You were looked at as polluted, contaminated, untouchable. Romans had this concept of miasma, a kind of spiritual filth, and you, my friend, embodied it daily. So while soldiers got cheers and gladiators got fame, you got the stink, literally. Children probably ran away when you walked by, and nobody, absolutely nobody, wanted to sit next to you at dinner. After a long day of wading in human waste, where do you think these poor souls went? Back to luxurious villas with mosaics and fountains? Not even close. Most likely they slept in tiny, filthy rooms near the very sewers they worked in. The stench never left. It clung to their clothes, their skin, their hair. And imagine trying to sleep with the faint sound of dripping water and the occasional rat scurrying across your chest. Sweet dreams, right? If the job didn't kill your lungs, it probably killed your will to live. Let's pause and think about food. Imagine starting your day cleaning a sewer and then sitting down for a meal. Whatever you ate, bread, olives, maybe some fish sauce, it probably tasted faintly like, well, your job. The smell was so strong that it clung to you, followed you everywhere. Other Romans might enjoy their garum, that famously smelly fermented fish sauce, but for a latrine cleaner, garum probably just felt like déjà vu in a jar. It wasn't just gross, it was dangerous. Roman sewers were dark, slippery, and full of rats. Some even had snakes slithering through the muck. And if that wasn't enough, there was always the risk of the ceiling collapsing or floods pushing a wave of waste straight into your face. Oh, and don't forget diseases. Dysentery, parasites, infections. The cleaner didn't just handle filth, he inhaled it, drank it accidentally, lived in it. Honestly, surviving 1 year on the job was almost heroic. Romans were superstitious, and they believed spirits haunted every corner of life, including toilets. Yep, the god Clocina ruled over the sewers. Some cleaners probably prayed to her daily, begging not to drown in poop. Imagine that, your morning prayer isn't for glory, but for not dying in sludge. And then there were the stories. People whispered about demons lurking in the dark tunnels, ready to snatch unlucky workers. Which, to be fair, was probably just a rat the size of a dog. But hey, in the shadows, everything looks scarier. If you passed a latrine cleaner on the street, you didn't pat him on the back and say, "Good job." You crossed the road. These workers were treated like walking sewage. Some Romans even believed they carried curses, that just touching one could pollute your soul. So imagine spending your day covered in filth and your nights being shunned like a plague victim. You were Rome's invisible backbone. but nobody invited you to the bathhouse. Now, you might ask, at least they were well paid, right? Nope. The empire paid them just enough to survive, because who else would take the job? No bonuses, no promotions, no retirement plan. Just endless shifts in hell's bathroom. And if you dared to complain? Well, Rome had a simple answer. Don't like it? Starve to death? Seriously, capitalism before capitalism. Here's the worst part. Sometimes latrine cleaning wasn't even a job you chose. It could be a punishment. If you angered the wrong senator, failed to pay your debts, or just ticked off the wrong guy in power, guess what? Welcome to the sewers. Imagine being thrown into a career where your uniform is whatever rags you didn't ruin yesterday, and your office is a tunnel that smells worse than death itself. That wasn't employment. That was a sentence. The tunnels were basically a labyrinth, and if you slipped or fell, good luck. Some cleaners drowned in sewage. Others got trapped during floods, swept away by a sudden surge of dirty water. It was like nature itself was trying to flush them out. The Romans had gladiators dying in the arena for entertainment, but cleaners? They died in silence underground with no cheering crowd, just rats watching. Think about smell for a second. The stink of the sewers wasn't something you could wash off. Even after a bath, it clung to your skin like a curse. People probably knew you were a cleaner before you even introduced yourself. That means even in your rare free time, you carried your job with you? On dates? Forget it. At the market? Everyone stepped back. Your cologne was eau de latrina, and nobody wanted a whiff. Let's give some respect to the true kings of the Roman sewers, the rats, fat, bold, and everywhere. They'd bite, steal scraps, and sometimes fall right on top of you from cracks in the ceiling. Imagine pulling a rake through sludge and suddenly surprise rat in your face. And in case you're wondering, yes, they carried disease. So every rat bite was basically a lottery ticket you didn't want to win. If daytime shifts were bad, nights were worse. Torches barely lit the tunnels, shadows twisted into monsters, and every drip of water echoed like a scream. The cleaners had to stumble through the dark, half asleep, still scraping waste. It was less like a job and more like serving a life sentence in the underworld, except Hades probably smelled better. Romans loved to glorify every profession that served the empire. Soldiers, builders, even chariot racers. But latrine cleaners? They got none of that. They were the shadows of the city, ignored until something clogged, and then suddenly everyone remembered they existed. Your whole career was summed up in 2 words, not honored. You'd die, and the empire wouldn't even blink. No statues, no songs, just another anonymous body tossed aside. Living inside sewage meant breathing it in every single day. Chronic cough, fevers, and skin infections were basically part of the job description. Most cleaners probably didn't live long, and those who did, well, they carried scars, rashes, and lungs filled with decades of filth. It wasn't just disgusting, it was slow-motion suicide, courtesy of the empire. Romans had all kinds of bizarre bathroom rituals. Some believed evil spirits lurked in the sewers and could crawl out through the latrines at night. Others thought the act of cleaning waste carried a spiritual curse. Guess who carried that stigma every single day? Yep, the cleaners. So not only did they smell bad, but people genuinely thought they were walking bad luck charms. Imagine being feared, hated, and laughed at all at the same time. The worst part? There was no real way up the ladder. Once you were a latrine cleaner, you stayed a latrine cleaner. You couldn't climb out of that pit socially or literally. For most, this was a lifelong sentence. So while Rome's elite enjoyed wine, theater, and baths, the cleaner's destiny was simple: die the same way you lived, covered in other people's waste. At the end of the day, being a Roman latrine cleaner was the empire's most thankless job. You kept the streets clean, you kept the sewers flowing, and yet you were treated as lower than dirt. The empire couldn't function without you, but nobody cared if you lived or died. So the next time you complain about your boss or your office, just remember, at least you're not ankle deep in Roman sewage, praying to a sewer goddess for survival. Could be worse, right?